This is Autoline Daily, the show dedicated to enthusiasts of the global automotive industry. Italy is not shy about wanting to expand vehicle production in the country. Fiat is the only major automotive producer in Italy, building about 750,000 vehicles last year. But country officials want to boost that output to 1.3 million a year. So Italy pushed Fiat to significantly increase production, even toying with the idea of taking a stake in parent company Stellantis just to get what it wanted. Stellantis eventually agreed to raise production by an additional 250,000 units to roughly 1 million vehicles a year. That means Italy would like to find someone to make 300,000 more vehicles a year in the country, and it has a 6 billion euro war chest for supporting local auto manufacturing as a way of luring in another automaker. And according to a report in Reuters, Chinese automaker Chery is the one Italy is, quote, betting on most. While we've seen opposition to Chinese automakers in Europe, it mostly seems to be related to cheaper EV imports. There's less pushback on domestic production, and Italy wants all the jobs it'll create. Software-defined vehicle, or SDV, is a pretty buzzy word you're likely to hear, even if you only pay attention to the auto industry a little bit. These are vehicles where pretty much every function is controlled by software and can be updated. Every automaker is working on them, with some changing entire development philosophies, now designing a car from the inside out around the software. But SDVs might not be as close to market ready as you might think. Chip maker NXP Semiconductor and Ward's Intelligence surveyed automotive executives from around the globe and say a majority of them don't think that at least 50% of new vehicles will be software defined before 2030. The biggest hurdles seem to be building up a team that can develop a competent system and having to deal with legacy electronic architectures. But most automakers have already started laying the groundwork for full software-defined vehicles, and some are clearly ahead of others. Tesla's plant in Berlin is up and running again after an arson attack at a nearby power station last week shut it down. Germany's Handelsblatt newspaper reports that Tesla was unable to build about 8,000 vehicles during the stoppage that will cost the company 400 million euros. Elon Musk also visited the plant today for the restart of production. General Motors is losing a couple of its top executives. The company announced that Gerald Johnson, the global head of manufacturing, is retiring after 44 years with GM, but he will remain at the company through the end of the year to help with the transition. Replacing Johnson is J.P. Clausen, who GM says has, quote, vast expertise in global manufacturing, product engineering, and scaling operations. Clausen spearheaded the scaling up of EV propulsion systems at Tesla's Gigafactory 1, and he's also worked at Google, Lego, and biomanufacturing company Zymergen. GM also announced that its head of software, Mike Abbott, is leaving the company due to health reasons. GM poached Abbott last year from Apple, and CEO Mary Barra has credited him with helping to turn around its software development. GM's VP of software, Boris Sedinok, sorry if I grossly mispronounced that, is going to run the division on an interim basis.
We want to know what drives your testing. OTA, connected car, diagnostics, remote testing. Intrepid Control Systems is here to help you work from anywhere. Intrepid Control Systems, driven by your data.
We've got some great production updates from Auto Forecast Solutions. It says Cadillac is working on an all-electric sedan that would be like an EV version of the CT4 or CT5. So, a lot cheaper than the Celestiq. It's said to be built on a version of the Ultium platform for more premium light-duty cars and crossovers called BEV Prime, and would go into production at GM's Lansing Grand River plant in August of 2028. There's also an update on Lucid's plans to build vehicles in Saudi Arabia. If you didn't know, Lucid is majority owned by the Saudi Public Investment Fund, and in 2022, announced plans to start construction of a local plant later that year. At first, it plans to make about 5,000 cars a year from pre-assembled kits that are put together at its plant in the U.S. and Arizona. But it will eventually become a full domestic manufacturer, which will likely happen when it launches the Gravity SUV and a smaller CUV. That CUV is set to start production in Saudi Arabia in June of 2026, followed by the U.S. in August of that year. Lastly, you may have seen rumors that Nissan is in talks with Fisker, some reports specifically saying it's interested in the Alaska pickup truck. I personally would be surprised if it happened, but Auto Forecast says if it does, the electric pickup would be made at one of Nissan's U.S. plants in Mississippi. BYD's sales in Europe are still relatively low, but it plans to aggressively grow them over the next few years. The automaker, which launched in the EU in 2021, sold less than 16,000 vehicles last year, all of which were pure electric. That accounted for 1.1% of the European EV market. But BYD's head of Europe tells Automotive News that it wants to boost that to 5%, or about 70,000 EVs, before it starts production at a new plant in Hungary around 2026. That plant will have an initial capacity of 150,000 vehicles, which could be doubled to 300,000 units. BYD believes the European plant will help it gain more customer acceptance in the European market. Major automakers in Japan like Toyota and Nissan are fully agreeing to union demands for pay raises that are the largest in 25 years. Toyota workers will get nearly $200 more a month, and it will also give out record bonus payments. Last year, those bonuses were said to be equal to more than 6 months of pay, but that's likely going up to over 7.5 months. This should allow the Bank of Japan to end negative interest rates, which kept the yen weak, but also turbocharged the earnings of most Japanese companies. Now it looks like workers are going to get a piece of that pie. Volkswagen's commercial truck subsidiary, the Traton Group, which includes Navistar, Scania, and MAN, is partnering up with autonomous driving software developer Plus to launch Level 4 autonomy. The companies are already testing self-driving trucks on public roads in the US and Europe with a safety driver on board. This year, they plan to pilot commercial operations with fleets. Then they will start series production and global deployment at scale. But that brings us to the end of today's show. Thanks for making Autoline a part of your day.
Autoline Daily is brought to you by Bridgestone, solutions for your journey, and by Intrepid Control Systems, over-the-air engineering. Boost your game.